In this lesson, we'll talk about routing areas of higher resolution into areas of lower resolution. So one of the common issues that you'll face when you're building models is that you'll have areas where you've defined it with a particular resolution, and then you'll need to have areas that are connected to that that are much higher resolution. So in this case, we have a hand, and let's say that we've got a lot of resolution in here to define the fingers, but we have lower resolution coming up into the arm, okay? And we don't need all of this resolution coming up into the arm. So some of this we can kind of circle around, and you can see where it's sort of looped around and looped in on itself a little bit. But even up here into the wrist, you can see that this is much higher resolution than this. And so one of the challenges that students will face is that they will have to combine areas like this, and sometimes they're not quite sure what to do. So we have a few options here. Let me just turn on wireframe so that we can always see our wireframe. One of the options obviously would be to take whichever one is the highest resolution that has the most detail and then add resolution to the lower resolution piece to match up with that. So here you can see that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, we've got 10 lines going around here. Here you can see we've got a lot more than that. Okay, so we could go in and add resolution until we've got a match here. Another way would be to reduce the resolution at the intersection. So we keep the resolution here and then kind of dial it in and reduce it as it comes up in here. All right, so one of the ways that we can do this is just to simply merge vertices or use our split polygon tool. So we could come in here and take both of these points, let's say, and merge those together. Okay, so now where we had 2 points or 2 vertices, we now only have 1. So we've reduced the number, our resolution number, by 1. Okay, we could do that all the way around. Looking at this, that gives us triangles right here. Okay, so that can be an issue if you're using smoothing. If you're in a pipeline that doesn't allow for triangles, it doesn't like triangles. You know, they're in a kind of a deformable spot here on the wrist. So that may not be something where you want to actually have triangles. If you just need to maintain quads, but you still need to reduce that, you can take, instead of 2, you can take 3 points and merge those together. And you can see I need to take my distance up a little bit. So now we've taken what was 3, 1, 2, 3, reduced it to 1, so we've reduced it by 2. So we've now subtracted 2, but the advantage is that we now, if we come in and take the base of this, okay, so that middle line, and kind of move that down, you can see if we now delete this, where we have this, we can call a kite here. And so that's essentially taking 1, 2, 3 lines that are flowing in a particular direction and channeling it down into 1 line. Okay? And that's one method that people use, for instance, on the back of the head or the top of the head, where you've got geometry from the face where you need a lot of detail coming up and over the head where we don't need a lot of detail. You'll oftentimes see kites like this where you've got the geometry routed down and piped down. So now we're only, instead of talking about 1, 2, 3, 4 faces wide, now from this point on you're only talking about 2 faces wide. So we're saving on polygons. We don't have as much geometry to have to deal with. Okay, and you can see, you can look at this as a kite, or you can also look at that as, you know, this geometry is being routed around. So it doesn't create the cleanest geometry, so you don't have geometry just flowing strictly this direction and this direction, but it is a method for kind of reducing the amount of resolution at a particular point without necessarily modifying the resolution of the high-res piece where we need all of that detail. Okay, so once we get those sort of matched up, you know, you could come around and do the same thing over here and kind of take these 3 and merge them together. Again, take that distance up, and then you could come in and again delete that edge, maybe take the bottom of that kite and move it down a little bit. All right, and you can you can see reduce that geometry quite a bit. So whereas we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 divisions here, now we have 1, 2, 3. Okay, so we've taken it down by 4 already, just with a couple of merges. And so that's one way that we can really kind of route geometry in and match it up with a lower res piece. Now, keep in mind, the cleanliness of your geometries can be important, and so you want to just be mindful of that. The reason people put it, coming across the top of the head is because the head is typically not going to deform, and it's not going to. It's probably going to be covered by something maybe, and so you can put it in an area that is a little bit less conspicuous. Now here, we don't have that option necessarily because it's kind of right at that wrist joint, but it's still doable. Another option would be to come in and try to reduce this geometry. And if you want to spend more time on this, you could certainly start to clean this up a little bit more, and bring these kites out here into the top of the hand where the deformation won't be. And so that will help a little bit too, where you have nice clean geometry here on the wrist, let's say, but then your kites will be up here kind of on the back of the hand. Okay? So that's just a way of matching up a low and a high res piece. Now, if you've got an arm that is isolated like this, you may be able to come in and add extra geometry, and just think about if you can use it. So if you've got a line that you need to add in here that's going to go all the way up here, you're going to have to, if you're going to be smoothing this, you're going to have to modify the shape of that arm after you add that resolution in there. You're going to have to add that geometry, or tweak that shape rather, to maintain the smooth shape. But it may be geometry that you can use. If you need a sharp edge up here, you can use it, pull those close together and make a sharp edge. So, you don't have to stay away from adding extra resolution. Okay? You just kind of come up with a compromise. Add a little bit here, take a little bit away here, and create a little bit more of a gradual transition versus taking something that's really, really high, trying to just make one line of, where it all goes down to nothing. You can sort of gradually take that down into the lower res piece. Okay, so that's just a couple of tips. Some things that I've seen some students trip up on is just kind of combining two pieces that are of differing resolutions. Okay, so the next thing that we will go ahead and take a look at are working with the stars or the poles that we'll have on our models, and just talking about what those are. So we'll go ahead and talk about that in the next lesson.